What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Um, this past Sunday, the third episode of the HBO docuseries Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty aired, and I watched it. I watched part of it yesterday, last night. I finished watching the rest of it today, and I have to say I like this episode. This has been my favorite episode so far. Each one of these episodes is usually 2 to 3 different storylines going on to keep your interest. The main storyline is the fact that the Lakers are looking for a head coach. Of course, it was the end of the second episode when Jerry West dropped that bombshell announcing that he would not be the head coach under Dr. Jerry Buss. Now, as far as Jerry West is concerned, we're starting to see some of the developments that would make him a more stable human being, I guess. He recognizes that he is not happy. And he recognizes that he would not be a good head coach. His personality would not fit with this team. He could see that. Um, and even though it looks like betrayal, to the Lakers and everybody else's part, he recognizes that that his personality is not suited to be a head coach. But he does have an eye for talent, which is some things that we will see develop later on with him. Okay, a precursor. Um, and he's, like I say, he's moving into a path where he's, you can see the foundations. He's apparently developed a relationship with a woman that seems to be serious. He's finding some of the structures for happiness in his life that had abated him for so long. Um, but Dr. Jerry Buss becomes fixated on hiring uh, Jerry Tarkanian. Now, Jerry Tarkanian, the real life Jerry Tarkanian, passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 84. But he was the longtime head coach, college head coach of the UNLV Running Rebels. I think the most popular version of that team was in the early 1990s with Larry Johnson. And Jerry Tarkanian was a great coach, but he was also a bit shady. Okay, he was shady. He didn't give a damn about the rules. It was a lot of shit with him. You know what I'm saying? And that's touched upon in the episode. But he's a great coach, and his coaching style appeals to Jerry Buss. It's different. Dr. Jerry Buss wants a high octane, exciting team, and but Tarkanian is resistant to LA. He doesn't think that the atmosphere fits a guy of his personality. So his agent, who's a friend of his, who's actually a great friend of his, named Vic Weiss, I think it is, um, they set up a meeting, and Tarkanian's not really interested. They go to a restaurant, they're eating, not very interested, until Dr. Jerry Buss just gives him an offer that was just ridiculous. Ridiculous. At the time, Tarkanian was making $75,000 a year, which in 1979 is really good money. Okay, Dr. Jerry Buss is prepared to give him $750,000 a year, which, if you know anything about income back in the late 70s, especially during that time with the economy is concerned, as shitty as the economy was, that's more money than most CEOs were making. Plus, he was going to provide him with 2 vehicles, one for himself and for his wife. High-end vehicles. It was an offer that he couldn't refuse, and they took it, but there's some complications. You see, Weiss and perhaps Tarkanian are connected to the mob. And when you're in the mob, or you're connected with those guys, you know, they don't take too kindly to tremendous, huge changes. Like moving from Las Vegas, their area of muscle and operation, to LA. And so ultimately, what happens is, whether it has something to do with the fact that Tarkanian's coaching with the Lakers or announced he was going to coach the Lakers, because this gets forgotten. Jerry Tarkanian, for a couple of days, was the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. He had accepted. But then what happened is his partner, lifelong friend, well, I shouldn't say his partner, his agent and lifelong friend, Vic Weiss, was murdered. And this actually happened. It was talked about in the episode, but it actually happened. But it appeared that he was murdered more for two reasons. He was murdered for more for skimming when it comes to money laundering and not paying his debt. He had owed probably $60 to $100,000 and had not paid them back. He was murdered more for that than anything else. But the episode kind of makes it seem like, they weren't too happy with him moving to LA, Tarkanian. So ultimately, it's not presented yet in the episode, but Tarkanian will turn down that head coaching position. Another thing that's talked about in the episode is Magic finally moves from Lansing, Michigan to LA. And, the LA scene isn't exactly what everything Magic thinks it's all about. He thinks it should be all about glitz and glamour. But he notices that a lot of the Lakers players, they're not living the lavish lifestyle that he assumed that they would be living. For instance, Norm Nixon, who is the team's point guard, the star point guard, actually has a lot of side hustles for extra money. And a lot of the celebrities that dress nice at the premieres were actually kind of broke. You know, um, Magic is a bit homesick, and but there's one thing that Magic likes, and that is the nightlife and some of the excesses of LA. If you catch my drift, if you watch the series, these things will probably end up being some of Magic Johnson's, obviously, end up being part of his downfall. But I have to say this too, man. Magic actually is the least interesting character right now. Now, part of it probably is because he's only 19 years old still. He hasn't really developed his persona yet, the Magic Johnson persona. But he's just a kid. He's not very interesting right now. Um, One thing I do like, another thing I like about this series is some of the characters' habits, especially Dr. Jerry Buss, and I saw Magic do it, breaking the fourth wall, which is talking to the audience sometimes. I find that kind of hilarious when they do that. This episode also introduced two new characters. Two new characters, I should say. One, Pat Riley. Now, Pat Riley is a former head coach, excuse me, a former player of the Lakers, who is auditioning to be I believe, a color commentator with Chick Hearn. All right, who we all know is a legendary, voice for the Lakers for so many decades. And another character is introduced is Jack McKinney, who all of us know anything about the Lakers. He's very important to the genesis of Showtime. All right, Jack McKinney is very important, but unfortunately, his tenure with the team was cut short due to a catastrophic event. And but that's all I want to say in this episode, man. I like this episode, really good. Um, I look forward to the next episode. Trying to think if there's anything I really missed. Um, Magic likes the ladies. I know that. I mean, he really is attracted to women. Um, but what healthy 19-year-old isn't? But anyway, that's all I got to say. Tell me what you guys think.